Look what I got in the mail yesterday. I just wanted to show this off, even though this has nothing to do with today's video. Stunning. Though I didn't know Jesus was on the front of the cover. No one told me that, and I never noticed that that is Jesus. And I also got the third book because I plan on reading these books this year. Today's video is going to be very quick and very fast because I'm just going to sit down and talk about the best romances I read last year. And because I was in a slump last year and didn't read a ton, I don't actually have a lot of suggestions. If I look at my Goodreads challenge for last year, all up I read like 72 books, and that includes the books that I DNF'd because I did DNF a hell of a lot last year, so we don't have many to go through today. There wasn't many romances that really wowed me, but let's just keep in mind that I was in a slump for a majority of the year. I'm now out of it, thank Jesus. I do this video every year, and most of the time I have a standalone video which is dedicated to all my favorite standalones of that year that I read, and then we usually have a series video as well where I dedicate the whole video to all the series that I read that year that I loved. I don't even have enough books to talk about to fit into 2 videos. It's just one. Even though I don't have a ton of books to recommend and talk about today, I do have a few, and the ones that I am going to talk about I really did love. And even amongst the pregnancy brain weird slump I was in, these were still absolute fucking bangers. Okay, so if I could read these pregnant in a slump and love them, they're fucking good. Okay, take my word for it, they are good books to read. Without further ado, we're gonna get straight into the video. I hope you enjoy, bitches. The first favorite I want to talk about is Mafia, Mistress by Mia Fanelli. I absolutely loved this book, and the second one, Mafia Darling, because this is a duet. I read this sometime in the beginning of 2022 and ate this shit up. You guys know I'm a Mafia queen. I've read so many Mafia romances, but because of that, I actually can be quite judgmental when I read a Mafia romance. After a while, plots can become quite predictable. You read the same stories quite often, but this one grabbed me within the first page. It's about this young girl who is the daughter of a Mafia boss in Canada, and her father's in debt or something or other, and to pay off the debt to the big boss in Italy, they have organized an arranged marriage between the daughter of the boss in Canada and the son of the boss in Italy. But during the journey to Italy, the heroine actually falls for and starts getting the hots for the dad, bitch. The big bad Mafia boss in Italy. Yeah. And the dad starts getting the hots for her as well. It was very glamorous. Like, think glamorous Mafia, red lingerie, shopping in Milan, bitch. Like, that was the vibe, and I was in it when I was reading it, and I really did enjoy it. The Confidence of Wildflowers and the Resurrection of Wildflowers by 𝐒𝐈𝐍𝐿𝐒. Now, I know a lot of people either love this duet or hate it. I personally loved it. The first book has a bunch of trigger warnings, heads up, and I didn't know that this particular scene was going to happen at the end of the book, and it broke my heart. Picture small town vibes. We've got a heroine that is meant to be going off to college, but she decides she doesn't want to, and she wants to stay in her hometown. She's in a relationship, but her boyfriend is going off to college and is trying to like encourage her to go off to college as well, but she's just not interested. We have this neighbor that moves in across the road who she starts taking an interest in, and she ends up becoming the nanny of his son. So we got like small town, age gap, you know, forbidden because she's like in a relationship and he's older with a kid. It's a whole vibe, okay? The one thing I will say about this duet is after the first book, you're just sitting there like, what the actual fuck did I just read? And then you start the second book and you're just like, oh my God, what the fuck is happening every single page? So I think that's why a lot of people don't like it. I compare it to Something in the Way by Jessica Hawkins. If you've read that, you understand. It is probably one of the worst series I've ever read in my life, but it's also one of my favorites because even though I hated every single thing that happened in the story, I couldn't stop reading it. I was addicted. I could not stop, and I was getting so mad at the book. And with The Resurrection of Wildflowers, that's how I felt, and that's why I enjoy it. So if you don't like books that, I guess, trigger some anger and get you mad and you just get so angry at whatever's going on between the characters, this duet isn't for you, but it was definitely for me and I loved it. One of my favorites of the year. Then we have Pereira, I think that's how you pronounce it, by T.L. Swan. I had been waiting for this since 2020, I think, because at the end of The Italian, which is one of her Mafia books, you read a glimpse of this story and this relationship, and it kind of leaves you hanging. Like, it's a bit of a cliffhanger because you're like, what? And I was waiting almost 2 years to read this, and once Swan released it, it did not disappoint. This is a very taboo book. It is about two siblings. Now, hear me out. I'm quite open-minded when it comes to my romances. I like to change it up and read different things, no matter what the trope is. You know, I'm just easygoing with my romances, but there is a particular thing that happens in this book that makes you go, oh, okay. So I'm going to tell people to read it, okay? Give it a chance before you judge it. So this book is about a young man who loses his father. It's set in Italy. And when his father dies, he ends up finding out all this random crazy stuff about his dad. The fact that his dad was in the Mafia, the fact that his dad had other children, the fact that his dad was married to another woman, and that he is actually the mistress's son. It's like his father had two different lives, and he kept the Mafia aspect of his life away from him. But when obviously he dies, he ends up learning so much about the family business and gets involved with it. And then the heroine is his sibling that he didn't know was his sibling at the time. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. If you're interested, I highly, highly recommend this one. I love Swan, but I will say the past few releases from her I haven't been a fan of, except this one. This one was classic, her style, and I loved it. I felt this was quite a glamorous Mafia book too, especially because it was set in Italy, and I do love when my Mafia books have that kind of glamorous, like classic Mafia vibe to it. This one definitely had it. Tide by Carian. I read this during the biggest slump of last year. I was in a slump the entire year, but there was a couple of months that it was so bad I literally couldn't even look at a book. So I picked up this book because I realized when I was looking at my shelf, oh my god, I haven't read that book, and Carian's my favorite author. And this book was brilliant. It gives off a little bit of like Credence vibes, not in a sense of like the relationship, but it's in a cabin, in the woods, it's that type of vibe. I did thoroughly enjoy this because of the heroine's backstory. So this is about a heroine who gets kidnapped when she's a child, and she's abducted and kept for like 11 years or something, tortured, and things happen to her, and it's really, really horrible. She escapes one day, and Tyler, I believe, saves her and kills her kidnapper. Now, this heroine has not been in society and pretty much has spent her entire childhood underground getting tortured. So she socially doesn't really understand how the world works. She really wants to find the person that saved her and get to know him and to thank him and, I don't know, spend some time with him. But Tyler is a very particular person. He's an outcast. He lives in the woods by himself. He is mute. Yes. So we have a mute character. I love mute characters. And he has absolutely no interest in getting to know her. This book doesn't have a hell of a lot of sex in it, but when there is sex, it's really powerful and it's really good because we're dealing with like trauma and experiencing love and stuff like that after being through so many traumatic experiences, especially when they're related to sexual assault and stuff like that. Anyway, it's an emotional book. It's really good. One of my favorites, of course, is Karina Halley. She's just an awesome author, and I cannot wait for her to release a new book. Hopefully this year she will be dropping some bangers for us because she is just brilliant. The Words by AJ. This was super freaking random and literally one of my favorites. Well, obviously it's in the video, but it is the top of the list. I loved this book so much, and it was my first read from this author. So I had a friend message me who was in a slump at the same time as me and was also pregnant. And she was like, oh my god, you need to read this. It's giving me No Tomorrow vibes by Karina Halley, which is one of my favorite books and one of hers. It is a really big book, and obviously I was in a slump, so I ended up getting it on Audible. Side note, the Audible version of this book slaps hard. So we got this heroine who's in high school. She's not very popular. She's quite overweight. She ends up getting picked by her English teacher to tutor the popular boy in high school who is rough around the edges, comes from a bad family, has a lot of fucking trauma, is messed up as fuck, and is into music. Yeah. They have the hots for each other, things happen between them, but then something happens and the hero does something almost unforgivable to the heroine. Then we skip to the future. So that's set in high school, now they're grown. The heroine comes back into the hero's life, even though she still fucking hates him, because something is going on with him and she's the only one that can help him. So we got like enemies to lovers, the second part of the book, and it's so good. I do think that this book could have wrapped up before the ending. I felt like it kind of dragged on at the end, but overall, vibes. Blood Orange by Karina Halley, which you guys are not shocked by because the last couple of videos I've spoken about this book and this world that she's written, because they are interconnected standalones. I read this just after I had my baby and oh my god, it was the best book to fucking read after being in a slump for like 10 months. It just hit the spot. Vampires, witches, that like paranormal stuff, which I love so much. We've got the hero who is the real life Dracula. He's the person that Dracula was based off. And we have this heroine who is a witch and has been like set out to kill Dracula, and she has to kind of like get close to him and like persuade him and pursue him to get close enough to him to kill him. But obviously during that time of getting close to him, getting to know him, they fall for each other, but there is also a little secret, a little bit of a plot twist about the two of them that you read and you're like, oh my fucking god. I'm not going to mention it though because it kind of ruins the book if you already know. Go into it a little bit blind, baby, and you'll thoroughly enjoy the plot twist. Loved it. This is a duet though. Part 2, which is Black Rose, isn't out yet that I know of. I should probably check that. They're all my favorites of 2022. I know there's not many of them and it makes me really sad, but I'm really inspired to read a ton this year. As I've said on Instagram multiple times, if you follow me, that I am branching out. I am reading a ton, well, I'm planning on reading a ton of historical fiction, and I found some really good books already that I'm obsessed with, and I just need to change up my genre. So there's some other genres I want to kind of dive into this year, especially thrillers too. I need to find some really good thrillers. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. And when I find really good books, you'll hear from me, okay? That's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite book of 2022 was so I can put it on my TBR to be read, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.